Hello, and welcome to another amazing episode of TMC, where we are here to help you take your relationship from surviving to thriving. If this is your first time joining us, go ahead and subscribe. Today on TMC, we have Richard and Yoly McCarthy with Forever Marriage.
Together since high school.
Yeah, we are high school sweethearts.
High school sweethearts. So we've been together. I know we don't look that old. We've been together for 30 years.
Wow, awesome.
25. We celebrated 25 back in May of this year.
Actually, this October will be 31 years since our first date.
Yeah. So no, we're blessed. We have 3 amazing children. 2 of them are adults. Our daughter's a teacher. She turns 24 next month.
Yeah.
Our son's 22. He's in the Navy.
Yeah.
And then our younger son is 15 and he's a sophomore in high school.
Yeah.
You've been an educator for going on 26 years now?
26 years as an educator. I'm the geeky educator. I teach science and biomedical sciences and things like that.
Well, I've been with our local county government for 27 years. I spent 7 years, right at 7 years as a police officer, and then switched over to the fire department about 20 years ago. And I'm currently a battalion chief. With the fire department.
And we both serve as pastors at our church. We've been at our church now 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
We've grown there. It's saved our marriage, saved our family. And it's like we can't give enough back to God. And we've been there. We've served in many capacities. Campus pastors at one of our campus locations that unfortunately got shut down because of COVID, because it was in a school.
Yeah.
But we've been running the marriage ministry for over 6 years. I'm the coordinator for outreach at our church. So we do a lot of really cool community outreach.
We're full-time volunteer pastors. That's the best way to put it at our church.
That is awesome.
Awesome. So how did you all get started with the marriage ministry? How did that begin? How did that form and everything?
Just like anybody else, we've had struggles in our marriage. And about 16 years ago, we went through a difficult time. There was infidelity on Richard's part. And it was really tough on us. But that was at the point in our life that we realized, God was doing something really big. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those things that every time we turned around, somebody was asking about it. Now, this was after we had healed.
Right.
And
yeah.
And, it was maybe 2 years after. And we had been starting to serve when he was not being who he should. I was in a really dark place. And the only way I got out of it was to start serving at church. Mm-hmm. And I started serving in the media ministry. I actually started running it and the whole, the pro presenters and all the things. And it was my only way to survive. After we got healed and, we obviously got stronger, year of therapy, all this kind of stuff, and our church behind us, people started asking us for advice just randomly. And it was one of those things that God opened our eyes that it wasn't just us who have been through problems. It was almost, unfortunately, the majority of people going through things like that. And he kept bringing people to us over and over and over. And I mean, it must have been hundreds of couples that we've counseled over the past 16 years. What birthed out of it was a ministry that was really God-led. I mean, it was crazy. People just kept asking us, you guys got to talk about this. You guys got to talk about this. And we did. And it's blessed so many people and it's blessed us.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's amazing. The ministry is, we sit down and have couples conversations. We have a team that sit with people as well. And we put on a lot of fun ministry nights. We always start with a fun activity. Yep. And I treat it like I would my classroom, do like interactive stuff and make them run around and talk. I mean, it's really a lot of fun. But then once we get them all loose, then we give it to them.
Yeah, exactly. We make our messages we share on those nights are straight up because people, once again, if you're not involved in church, you got to work and live in the outside world and they're being bombarded. So we have always to a biblical standard and always respectful, but we hit the tough topics and the tough conversations as a whole ministry at the church. So it's amazing.
Our motto is love is a choice. You've got to choose every day to stay married, to love each other, even when you don't feel like it. So, which is rough.
One of the biggest things is that your spouse is not responsible for your happiness. That going into marriage, I know that a big thing, and we talked about this in our marriage ministry, everybody thought we're the perfect couple because we're high school sweethearts, especially in a predominantly Hispanic culture. The gringo, he always does everything right. And everybody had me on this pedestal, including Yoly, and it was like, if I wasn't happy, our marriage wasn't happy. And even on the flip side, if she wasn't happy with me, then we weren't. And it created such I won't go as far as toxic, but it creates such a hard environment to sustain, because you're trying to keep your spouse happy. And it's not something, honestly, that we are capable of bringing, because we know that the joy that God brings us is so different than temporary happiness. But I honestly, truthfully, the one thing I wish I know about is your spouse is not responsible for your happiness going into marriage.
I learned that the hard way when we went through what we did, because everything in my life, revolved around my husband. Mm-hmm. And revolved around hey, he's the perfect guy. He's my high school sweetheart. It's like the perfect little American movie story. And no one ever tells you after. It's really not happily ever after. It's happily working at this as much as you can. It's not, it just happens. And I was very blown away when it wasn't just happening. And I remember opening up my Bible. I had this couple devotional Bible that I promise you I didn't pay attention to until this happened. My mom gave it to me. I had opened up to one of the pages, and it literally said, God did not make marriage to make you happy. God made marriage to be an example of Christ's relationship with his church on earth. It doesn't mean you can't be happy. It doesn't mean that, but that's not the goal. Right. God didn't say, hey, go be married to get happy. And that's not what it's about. Marriage is not about happiness. You can be happy when you're married, and we want people to be happy when they're married, because, anyone can do it as long as you're working at it and, fighting through the tough spots. But you got to stop putting in your head that marriage is about happiness, because then when the humans in the relationship fail because we're human, then all of a sudden your whole perspective of marriage, now you think the marriage is terrible because now you're not happy because you're going through a rough spot. And you can't do that. Your happiness has to, like Richard says, come from God, has to come, your joy from him, and everything else will fall into place. And that's when, I love you, honey, when you get to those days of like, okay, babe, I love you. God, let's talk. Because
happens from time to time.
So it's one of those fallacies that are perpetuating in culture that marriage is what brings you happiness. And that's not the case. It's God and your relationship with God and who you are that makes you happy. And then you guys can be happy together as equals. Equally yoked is not just about spiritual. It's also about emotional and, part of it.
Yeah.
So true. So true.
Where do you think this misconception, where do you think this come from?
That's a really good question. I'd say from fantasies and books and movies.
It's almost like this, especially nowadays, we live in an instant gratification society. And we also live, even before, obviously, once again, in our age range, when we were all younger, you didn't have all these social medias and things like that. But it's still, it changes a lot. But even in that, our society for eons has been so self-centered. And everything that we bring into a marriage, if things are not changed prior to saying I do, and you come in with these almost unrealistic expectations that it's all about me, it's all about what I'm going to receive out of the marriage. And I'm sure you guys have seen it. And I know that when we sit down and have conversations with couples, it's always the same thing. They're not meeting my needs. They're not doing what I expected. They're not making me happy. It's like,
they don't make me happy.
When was it about you? And I think that that's one of the things in our society where everything is perpetuated around, it's all about you and find yourself and make yourself happy. That then filters over into marriage relationships and destroys them.
I know for me, when we were growing up, it was, those 80s teenage movies. Oh, everything's perfect. He held the radio to her in the window,
singing, serenading her.
Oh, that's it. Life is perfect now. And that's what you thought. It's like, oh, I got married, so we're good, right? And then it was like, wait, what happened? And there wasn't as many, and I hate to say it, but media has a lot to do with it. Books have a lot to do with it. And it's just romanticized. Marriage has become romanticized as a fairy tale. And it's not a fairy tale, it's life. It's a beautiful life. It's a very beautiful life, but it's not meant to be a romance novel.
Wow.
That didn't make it to be a romance novel. He made it to be a relationship, and where you're gonna, sharpen each other as iron sharpens iron, and become an example of God in His church on earth, forgiving and forgiving each other, giving each other grace. And it's unfortunate because it's such a beautiful thing, and it was easy to romanticize, but it just evolved into something that people have turned into what it shouldn't be.
Yep.
This is why I believe that's why premarital counseling is so important.
Yes.
Yes.
Because without it, you have this false illusion of what marriage is supposed to be. And that premarital counseling can definitely help you in your relationship to kind of hone in on what marriage really about.
If the singles show up to the marriage ministry or to whatever you guys are doing for couples or for people, period, what advice would you give to a single that's desiring to be married?
I think one thing with singles that we see a lot is you're not going to change them after you get married. Certain aspects of the individuals may change, but the thing is, we go into marriage and you see it so much with young couples that they really don't get to know each other deeply. They know each other on the surface. Instagram, everything's about the facade that we put up or the life we put up. Sad thing is, so many relationships start this way and they don't go any deeper than a cuddle. There's no
Wow.
There's no depth to them.
Yep.
And they don't really get to know each other. They don't dive in, and they go on with this perspective that, okay, cool, we may not be agreeing on things, but we're going to change some things up.
So we had at one point a couples group with like 30 people, like 15 couples easily. And it was sweet because there was only one or two couples that weren't married.
Right.
And the rest were like early marriages and stuff. But we all loved like pouring into these two new couples that were about to get married. And we were doing one of the devos, and the one young lady literally in front of everybody says, "Oh, wait, you mean they don't change when they get married?"
Wow.
Everybody lost it.
We didn't mean to laugh at her, but it was funny.
Every married couple went, "Lady, no." And the poor girl, I felt so bad. And it was unfortunate, but you know what? It was a beginning of her awakening, because she thought that when they got married, he would become a better Christian. He would be a better this, a better that. There's this perspective that that's what would happen. And what really happens, and I'm sure you guys have mentioned it, it actually amplifies. Anything you really don't like about your spouse, get better after marriage. It actually gets worse because they've taken off their filters. And
now I got you.
They're not
I
even
trying
anymore. He would change because he's a husband now. No, you actually become more of yourself. And that's a part of the process in growing in the marriage. That's why the first few years are so hard, because you're learning how to be yourselves with each other in a more intimate setting. Even those people that live together, they can tell you once you get married. That's why the divorce rate is higher, I think, sometimes. Most of the time with people who live together before they get married. But those are the issues that you see. They haven't really figured it out with the true commitment. Yeah. And that's the unfortunate part, is they truly go in. You singles, you don't think that things are going to just automatically get better because you said "I do." It just means you have more accountability. Yeah. And sadly, the character flaws may be amplified. Right. Let's put it that way.
Go in with your eyes wide open.
Yes.
And that's the thing, is don't go in thinking, I'm going to change my spouse to meld to my ways.
Right.
It's about the two of us coming together, and like a good tree in a storm. You got to bend, otherwise you're going to break.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't get that, especially as singles coming into a relationship.
If it's somebody who never really liked working, would hop from job to job, just because you got married doesn't mean that they're going to automatically find a job and be stable now.
Or have a child from them.
Right. And that's the big thing that we see with singles, that we try to encourage them, is don't have the expectation that they're going to change unless they want to, right? But is this thing of, well, because I want you to change and we're married, you're going to change. And that doesn't happen. You can't control your spouse.
And I know this happens in the marriage. I hear people say this all the time. It's maybe whether it's the male or the female, they may be uncomfortable or don't like something about the person while they're dating. And the person that they're dating tell them when they get married, everything is going to change. Let's talk about that, because I believe that it's a setup for failure, but most people fall for it.
It is an issue. And I've seen that because I think they're trying to convince themselves.
Yeah.
They'll literally tell their fiance, "Babe, when we get married, things will be different. Things will be different." But it's human nature. We've developed habits, and you have to truly be very intentional to change your habits. I mean, what does it take, like 60 days to break a habit? Absolutely. And unless you're actually truly doing something about it, you're going to fall to your ways. And I don't understand why people do that. I don't think it's malicious in nature. I think they truly think that they'll change.
Yeah.
But it's that other aspect in this, one thing is to tell people that your spouse character traits may be more amplified, but it's also a reminder to themselves, you're not going to change like you think unless you're actually doing something intentional about it. Because back to the whole fantasy thing, everybody thinks that marriage fixes everything. I won't be lonely anymore. I won't need as much money anymore. There's so many misconceptions that, the enemy puts in your head. And unfortunately, that's what he does. Marriage makes things wonderful, but it doesn't necessarily make circumstances better.
No. And that's what tough is. The perceived commitment will fix everything. And it's trying to tell people it's okay to take a little extra time to get to know one another and make sure you're making the right decision. Going back to that young lady, they actually didn't end up getting married. She realized over time it was not going to go well because he just kept getting worse and worse in the way he was walking. But as sad as that is from a romantic standpoint, it was actually the best choice.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I was thinking about that while you were talking, Richard, because you talked about the relationship having some depth and you talked about getting to know a person. And even though we, like you said, from the romantic part of you, like, oh, that's sad, they broke up. But looking at it from hindsight, it's better to end it before you build a life with this person and bring kids into the world. And then you like, wait a minute, this ain't getting no better. We done. Because now it's affecting other lives versus just the two of us deciding that we're not going to work out. So I think it's very, very important that those that are single spend more time getting to know their significant other, and also understanding what you guys said, that marriage is not going to change them. Whatever you see displayed while you're dating them or in that engagement time, are you able to continue to be with that person if that never changes? It is better for you to take the hit now and end it before you marry them instead of having to do it later.
Yeah,
that's good. That is good.
True.
I think it's safe to say, believe what they show you.
Yes.
Not to believe it.
Yes.
Yeah. And believe that they are who they are and not. I mean, very rarely do we see people when we counsel them that people are putting up a facade. They'll have a filter, but it's there. You can see, and it's that hope. It's a optimistic hope that things will change. But they need to know that that is not necessarily the case, and it's not in a bad way, but like you said, eyes wide open into the relationship so that they don't get thrown for a loop. Some of the biggest issues that we have seen with some marriages is, this codependency on their parents or their siblings and, what they had before. And they kind of wanted their marriage to be exactly like that and in both directions. And that's where a lot of it happens. So you'll see people dating for many years and they're like, okay. But in their mind, they still think that they're going to have what they had at home or their version of it. And that melding of the two cultures or the two types of families, because families have cultures too, not just, ethnic cultures and stuff, but the concept that those cultures, they think that they're going to bring in their own and it's actually something new. It's hard for them to let go and allow God to do something new and make some new culture out of their marriage. And that's one of the things that we've been blessed. We both have our parents still living and together each day. I mean, it's a miracle. Both of them been married. Your parents, how many years?
Well, my parents, so 1963, so what was that, 58 years.
Wow.
My parents, 49 years. And it's both solid marriages, of course, with their issues. But one of the things that we had to learn early on is to have our own culture. There's reflection of his family in our marriage and family, and a reflection of my parents and my family in our marriage. But we became our own. We became the McCarthys. We're actually called the Miami McCarthys in the family.
And a lot of that goes along biblical. I know some people don't want to hear just going on biblical standard, but a man shall leave his mother and father, and they'll
his wife.
And so many couples, like when you mentioned, Cedric, about they last a year. Well, because you're never pulled away from everything. It's like first off, you give the right to everybody, which you shouldn't, to have a peace in your marriage. I'm sorry, this is us
That's
here,
right.
and God, that's it. You can give your opinions.
That's hard for people.
They have such a hard time making that separation, and then it ends up tearing the marriages apart, and it's a shame.
It's not just a physical leave your mother and father. It's the emotional and the spiritual. It's like, this is what we are starting the new home, and when you don't allow yourselves to do that, too much influence from the families can cause a lot of problems in terms of that. We've seen that a lot. especially in the first couple years.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Too much input from too many people. It's almost like, Richard, when you said that, it's almost like I see somebody pulling the couples in all these different directions. You know how you used to have a little stretch toy and you just keep pulling it. And that's right. And oh, we're supposed to do it this way. Oh no, do it that way. And so many people pulling on the marriage.
I want to, since we the conversation kind of went here, I want to, let's talk about that individual that's single, may not, whether it's the male or female, that may not want to give up the single life. They want both lives.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Well, I can tell you right off the bat, not doing that ain't gonna work. It just is not.
We're proof of it.
We're I see it a lot in my work. I know that statistics are bad either way, but for some reason, I know at least locally and some of the stuff we've studied, I've seen first responders, whether police, fire, the divorce rate is actually very bad, because it's the idea that you want to live this separate life. It's not a duality. You have to choose to do this. And I see so many people, and when I've done premarital counseling, or like I tell the ones I do premarital counseling for, let's get everything out on the table now before you say I do, so that you're not back on my couch in 6 or 7 months. But sometimes they end up back on the couch in 6 or 7 months. And I find so many times that the young couples are, well, no, but we got married and he wants to go out with his friends. And, I got my time with my girlfriends, and I'm like, okay, but once again, we discussed this before we got married. When you guys decide to do that, it's not that you have to sever every relationship. If it's a healthy relationship with your friends, and like we still have the same group of friends, we've been together since high school. We've all known each other for 30-something years. So once in a blue moon, she goes out with the other moms and friends, and they go out to just have dinner.
Yeah,
but it's a like group. We're all friends. We're all mothers, fathers. We're all believers. So it's a healthy situation. And go out with the guys. But once again, that's once in a blue moon. It's actually a healthy outlet for us. But when people come in and it's still this selfish attitude that, okay, but I've lived this way for 30-something years. What, they're going to start telling me what to do? It's like, no, it's not that they're telling you what to do. It's that you two decided to come together and make a commitment. This is a vow. This is not just an agreement. This is a vow with God that you guys have decided to come together. So guess what? One of the biggest problems most people have is the life of selflessness instead of selfishness. That, guess what? When you get married, yes, there are sacrifices, but they're for the common and the greater good. And when you give of yourself, you start letting the things go. You start building that healthy, strong relationship, and your spouse becomes your best friend. I can never stress that enough. Most young couples are blown away. We did a marriage conference a few years ago. We're blessed. We had about 100 couples at it. And when we were speaking to them, we talked about just 3 of the loves. We talked about phileo, we talked about agape, and we talked about eros. So 3 amazing types of love in the marriage. But the funny thing was the phileo, the friendship love. So many young couples said, I never really thought of my husband or my wife to be my friend. We're like, are you kidding me?
Wow.
That's foundational to growing a good relationship, to know one another. And I see a lot of single people having that struggle.
It's an eye-opener for us because we take it for granted because we were friends before we really started even dating and got married. So we're very close. I mean, we talk all the time, and because of our jobs, we're like 2 ships passing in the night. So literally I'll be going to work while he's coming home from work. So we're always on the phone in the car and things like that. And people are blown away like that. And they don't understand it because there's this, again, a misconception that your spouse is not supposed to be your friend, almost like they're an enemy. Oh, that's the one I do, parenting with and house with, but this is who I have fun with.
Yeah. And you separate them.
That you can't. Your spouse is the one you're supposed to be having fun with. And when something happens in your life, they're the ones you want to call first, not somebody else. And like Rich said, it's hard for people to give up that life of selfishness for selflessness. And that's something that singles need to understand, that if they truly want to have a blessed marriage, they have to give up of themselves, of their flesh, of what they want, and have real conversations about boundaries and what is allowed and what is good for them at the beginning before they get married. So like, okay, we like being with our friends, but they're not married friends, so we shouldn't hang out with them. Be mature in your conversation. Not that you're paying off your friends, but you got to be real and like, okay, but if we keep hanging out with people that go to clubs, that's going to be a problem. Or to bars or other things. I mean, we see it all the time, and then they start to drift away, that connection together. Okay, you want to go to a bar, go with your spouse. You want to go to a club, go with you're supposed to do everything together. Yes, there are times to have fun with just the girls or the guys, or, things like that, the coworkers. But even in our relationships, we learn that we had to have the boundaries.
It has to be in a healthy manner.
Right. It has to be healthy. And this concept that all of a sudden your spouse is your enemy because they don't let you have fun. No, your spouse is fun. You had fun with them before. Why is it different after you get married? Yes, you can have best friends that are, the same gender and things like that. That's a whole nother conversation. But your spouse should be your best friend. And that's the one, you want to talk to them. Something happens in my life, babe, we need to talk. I want to tell you about this. I want to tell you all this wonderful stuff. Yeah. So singles need to remember that and realize that they should be friends first and keep it that way.
Absolutely. That's good. That's good. What is some practical things that a couple can do to ignite excitement or to unlock certain things in their relationship? You talked about, and I agree, your spouse should be your friend. And if there's a couple that's already married and they're not quite there, or I don't really see my husband as my friend or whatever, what are some practical things they can do to begin to unlock that, to build that part of their relationship?
All right. Well, I can tell you one of the big things that we believe in, we push, we share with other couples. One, never stop dating your spouse, and that goes beyond like dates as going on dinner. I said this at one of the marriage nights. Yoly got, I won't say mad at me, but she was like, "Oh my gosh, half the guys in the place didn't know what to say." I said, "Hey guys, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to introduce your wife to your girlfriend." They all, "Dude, what are you doing? You're killing me here." I told them, I said, that was the same face she made from the platform when we're saying. So here's what I mean by that. I tell guys, I said, look, at one point your wife was your girlfriend. You were leading and doing something for your girlfriend.
Yes.
Say yes to your wife. Why are you not still doing those things? And once again, always in a respectful manner, but we're straight up. We tell people, if, especially I talk to a lot of guys who have gone through the infidelity or they're struggling with it. And I'm like, do you still treat your wife like the woman that you want to go after? She's not the mother of your children. She didn't change her roles. You changed the roles for her. Do you still see your wife as that woman that you lust after? Go after your wife. It's biblical to want to. And people hate to hear this word in church, and I get it. They hate to hear the word sex. Oh my, look, it's biblical. Yeah. God gave it to us as a gift in marriages, and we almost shun it, like we shouldn't talk about it. Well, guess what? If you're not talking about it or enjoying it in your marriage, you're going to go find somewhere else to enjoy it. So we always are very real about bring it back in. Bring the fire back in your marriage. Don't just date in the sense of taking your wife out. No. Date your wife. In other words, go after her with the same fervor that made her want to say yes to you in the first place when you asked her to marry. Yes. And it doesn't have to be, we tell people, don't give us excuses. Oh, well, Rich, we don't have a lot of money. Cool. If you're part of the church and you have kids, trust me, call one of the people in the kids ministries. One of the young ladies or men can use the money to babysit. Take your wife on a picnic. If you can't afford to go out to a dinner, I don't care.
Put her in a bed. Go outside.
Go out, whatever. It's not about it's about the time together, about the time of building. And I think so many marriages become stale. They become mundane because, we're comfortable now. I got her to say yes. She's trapped. I have no problem. We got a couple kids. She's not going anywhere. So I told you I loved you when we got married. If anything changes, I'll tell you. So we see that so much, and it's just a shame.
Absolutely.
One of the things also that we talk about a lot is the fact that go have sex.
Right.
Put it in the calendar if you have to.
Put it in the calendar. We tell people, put it in the calendar, even if you give it a funny name. Text each other throughout the day. Our daughter once accidentally got like our messages because of iMessage or something. And she literally was like, "Ew, Mom." Like, why are you using our messages? So you have to go, like Richard said, you got to go after each other. And if your spouse is desirable or your source of pleasure, you're going to start looking at your spouse as like, oh, that's only the one who nags at me or says things to me. That's why we say, just go have sex, because God allows it. God gave it to you. It's beautiful. It feels good. And when the more you associate it with your spouse, the more you look at it and go, ooh, as opposed to, oh, this is the one that bothered me today.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate again, society is made it, and you see it in sitcoms and all that. Once you get married, you stop having sex. Who said that?
No, that's
Right.
Married people have better sex than single people, and the research has shown satisfaction is for sure. So that's one of the simpler things, and of course other practical things. Go cook together. Go do together. Do the things that we love competing cooking.
Yeah, we both enjoy it. We just go on walks together. It doesn't have to be anything crazy.
Yeah.
Time together is quality time together. Great.
Even if it's hard to talk to at first, because once you're together more, eventually you'll be able to start talking.
Doing the simple things. If you think about it, back when you were dating the person, the simple things meant so much. A walk in the park, a walk on the beach. You don't have to take them to a 5-star restaurant all the time. Some sandwiches, some chips, and chairs on the beach. And that's a date. That's time together.
I have to stop you here and talk about this. Because of social media, a lot of couples think that's what, because somebody that went to the restaurant and they took a picture of their steak, they took this expensive experience, and now you have couples and in relationships that is unhappy because of this false highlight. I mean, let's touch on that before we go.
Oh wow.
I mean, I think it's deadly. And I think it's dangerous to look on Instagram, to look on Facebook, and to level your relationship by somebody that may had an argument before they took the picture.
They probably fighting in the car all the way to the restaurant, trying to figure out how they're gonna pay for it. All of these things. So definitely, I do believe again that society plays a part of us thinking that these specific things mean that we're doing something important or special.
One of the things that we actually laugh about, that in reality with a lot of families, they start to, I want to say in another perspective, worship their kids' activities. Oh, we're too busy. We have too many activities. We can't be together because go be together in the activities. Half the time our little talks are watching the baseball game or martial arts. That's our favorite thing. We go sit and watch martial arts and we talk. And of course, every so often, hey, honey, I love you, doing great. But that's our time together, because we are being intentional. And that's that intentionality that is so important that I think people forget. They expect it to just happen. And they expect, like you said, if it doesn't look like what other people's social media, then it's not good. And that's not the case.
Well, it's life by comparison. And we even do it in marriages. It's like, oh man, look at this couple. The friends of ours, they're a few years younger, no kids. Great, they're on another vacation. They're out doing something else. And I'm sitting here at another event, or I'm working overtime. And we do life by comparison. Look, you don't know what their life is really like. Great, they get to go a couple places. But we're raising a next generation of children. We're raising a family. We're doing, the funny thing is, I'm very big on perspective. You can have two people in the exact same situation. One person's miserable, one person's happy as can be. Because their perspective of the situation. Like you said, Cedric, the perspective of, oh man, look at them. They're having a beautiful steak and everything. I can't afford to go get McDonald's with the kids. But, nonetheless, we are, trying to compare our lives. And look, stop. You can, once again, whether you and I go to a nice dinner or whether we just take a bike ride and hang out together, we have fun together. That's our perspective. We've decided, you know what? Those things are nice and I don't knock them. We do them. Right. But the moment or the location is not the experience. The person I'm with is the experience. And I think a lot of times couples use that.
That is good.
This place or this vacation or this restaurant, this is going to make my night. No, what's going to make your night should be who you're with. And we're going to enjoy the experience together.
If you have to rake leaves, if you have to weed the garden, if you have to cut the grass, if you have to do clean the house.
Let's not get crazy. That's not fun stuff. Let's not get crazy.
But even the chores we can do together. And that's
that in the contract.
I give him moral support.
Exactly. You're doing a great job, honey.
But we're together.
Wow, this was a great conversation. If someone wanted to connect with you and what you're doing, where should they go?
They should go to our Instagram, Forever Marriage Ministries. I know that there's a lot of hurt people out there, a lot of hurt marriages, and we want you guys to know that you're not alone. And we're part of a very big group of people like you, this amazing couple that want to be there for you guys, and definitely reach out to us for your concerns, and just know that you can get through it, and it can get better, and it can actually be much better than you ever expected.
Yep.
Awesome. On behalf of the TMC family, we want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and adding value to us all.
Thank you guys so much for the invite to the TMC podcast. It's been a blessing for us as well. First off, you guys are an amazing couple.
You guys are awesome.
You guys are awesome.
Thank you.
I actually enjoyed this time. I can't believe time's already up. It's flown by.
Yes, I know. It went by quick. We enjoyed it, man. This was fun.
We did. It was good.
Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on TMC. We hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, go ahead and subscribe. Click the like button and turn on your notifications so you'll be notified when we upload a video. If you're listening on iTunes, rate the podcast and leave a review. That helps us get the word out. Head on over to our leadership podcast, Lead to Greatness, where my husband is interviewing entrepreneurs and great leaders every week.
So we want to thank you for joining us today on TMC. Looking forward to hanging out with you again on next week as we continue to help you take your relationship from surviving to thriving. Bye. See you next week.